What's going on, guys? My name is Tyler Lauder. He is Aaron Ben, and this is Second and Short, the premier NFL podcast about all things NFL. Well, not all things, just what we want to talk about. But how you doing today, man?
I'm doing excellent. I got off work early today, so I just been savoring that downtime.
That feeling is like a feeling that I feel like no matter how old you are, will never get old. Like how gratifying it is to like get off of work early and just like have freedom.
Yeah. Or like when you go to school and have a half day at school, that was the best.
But we are here today to talk about another sleeper. And if you missed our previous episode, we talked about it on Monday. Link up above on why Aaron thinks the Denver Broncos are a big time sleeper in the AFC. This week, though, we're going to talk about same division, bring it back. You saw our Instagram live. We had that. We talked about same division. The Las Vegas Raiders are the team that I think has a chance to be a sleeper. Now, I've heard a lot of talks on the Raiders are in contention for Trevor Lawrence and whatnot. Here's my thing. Gruden is not a losing coach. He develops a system, he gets the players he wants, and he does well. And the guys they have in-house did well enough to go 7-9 last year with a very subpar receiving core that is slowly trying to build itself up.
Yeah, and it's a pretty competitive division, too. I mean, the Broncos, we talked about how they've improved. The Chargers were supposed to be good last year. They weren't. And then, but they got the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champion. I mean, that's just having them in the division makes the division super tough and super hard to get into the playoffs.
Now, everything we're saying here could all go out the window because the AFC is starting to get a little more competitive. But with the addition of the 7th seed, plus every year there's 4 new playoff teams this year, so that number could be 6, or it could still be same 4, but we only lose 2 teams. I just think there's a good chance for the Raiders to sneak in as a 7th seed this year. So, Aaron, why don't you kick us off?
If we're going to talk about last year, you mentioned they had gone 7-9 last year. And I think they surprised a lot of people because I think people in Gruden's first year, yeah, they went 4-12 the year before that. And so people kind of were like starting to doubt the whole Gruden contract, 10 years, $100 million. Didn't do a whole lot in his first year. Got rid of Khalil Mack, got rid of some key players, but last year it kind of seemed like they started to put it together. They were doing actually pretty well. At the beginning of the year, it was just towards the end of the year where they kind of lost a lot of games in a row. Like they lost 5 out of the last 6 games. But they were at 6-4 at one point. They were in the wild card race until the very end. They had a lot of people thought should have been the rookie of the year in Josh Jacobs, the running back. Derek Carr kind of took a step forward. Something we're going to talk about in a bit, but in my opinion, Derek Carr showed that he does have the potential to be the franchise quarterback that they believe he is. And their defense wasn't great, but it was it showed that they have the playmakers, they have the players that are kind of going to come in, and you can tell that they're going to be a very good team in the future.
Here's what's really impressive to me is that when you take over team rankings, I'm just looking at lineups.com, but they have their offense ranked 29th overall in the league. Their defense was 30th. And when I see things like that, that kind of tells me that they literally just like blew games late, or they like struggled to fine tune things, because if they're winning, but they're not delivering the statistics, that's just what I think that there's just like 1 or 2 things that are going wrong, that if you fix those things, we have a team that's going, 9-7, 10-6 potentially.
This will kind of be a defining year for John Gruden and the coaching staff, because they've got a couple of years. He's had a couple of years to get his guys. He's got his scheme put in, and I think like you think, they're gonna put it together this year.
Yeah, and that's all in their 2019 stuff, and we can kind of move into the next phase of this, and that's interview time, man. We talked about 2019. We're ready to move on for 2020. Let's start with the offense.
Well, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Derek Carr? Do you think he's going to take that step forward? Because showed a lot of promise a few years ago. Then he broke his leg, and then he kind of wasn't the same. People are kind of starting to doubt whether he does have what it takes to be a franchise quarterback. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards the last 2 seasons, but people kind of criticize his ability to throw it downfield and make it a big play downfield, and he kind of tends to play it safe. What do you think? Is he going to start to put it together here?
I think he will. My biggest thing is like, this sounds so weird that people aren't probably going to agree with this, but I honestly think that if like Antonio Brown was there last year, I think he would have shown even more growth and more development, because Derek Carr has never had a guy. He's never been the guy at quarterback that has had legit options all over the place. Like, we see some of these quarterbacks out there who have all the options in the world. We just got done talking about Drew Lock. Drew Lock has weapons for days. He could run out of his first 4 reads and find a 5th option that is a legit option. Derek Carr, really, in my opinion, has never had a true number 1 talent, a go-to guy, somebody that will help bail him out when he does make, iffy decisions, like a lot of quarterbacks do in the NFL. I think he regressed a little bit after he got hurt, because I think it was more mental. And he just kind of looked reserved in his return back from that injury. Then we get a coaching change. The culture changes with that coach. And I think he's moving into this culture. I mean, if the Raiders really didn't believe in him, I know they went and signed Mariota. If they really didn't believe in him, they would have drafted a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, a lot of Titans fans are saying that Marcus Mariota could come in and take over that starting quarterback spot and maybe do the Derek Carr what Tannehill did to him. Yeah, I don't see it happening. I don't think Marcus really has what it takes to be a starting quarterback in the league anymore, as much as I was a big fan of his before. So I think Derek Carr is safe for at least this season, and I agree. I think if they didn't think he could do it, if John Gruden and Mike Mayock didn't think he had what it takes, I think they would have drafted a quarterback. I don't think they would be afraid to make that move.
I think the most important thing here with Carr is to look at other numbers. Like, obviously, he regressed a little bit after that injury, but the past 2 years, like you said, he's had over 4,000 yards consistently. He's had 19 touchdowns to 10 interceptions the first year with Gruden, and then 21 touchdowns to 8 interceptions last year. He didn't miss a game in the past 2 years. He's only missed 2 games actually in his whole career. He's 94 starts for 96 games. He's made 3 Pro Bowls, and here's the best thing here. We're kind of talking about he kind of lacks the true deep ball that everybody loves in the NFL nowadays. He's just a gunslinger. He's more conservative than other quarterbacks, but with Gruden, his average yards per attempt have increased above his average both years. So that shows me that he's playing in the right system now with the right coach, and he's just getting it.
Yeah, and if you look at last year, also career high passer rating, career high yards, and completion percentage. He hit that 70% completion mark last year as well. So I think just needs to get his touchdowns up a bit. I know he's been good throughout his career at converting 3rd and long, which is kind of a surprising stat to some people. But I think they're trying to get him the weapons he needs now. I mean, they've got a lot of I don't know if not top tier wide receivers, but decent above average wide receivers. You can get them the ball and they're going to catch it. You're not going to be 1,500 yard receivers, but these are solid veteran receivers.
Well, let's stay with that. Let's stay with that receiving room. Let's just stay with his options. And the thing is here is that this is the most complete wide receiver room that Derek Carr has had. And it's not just receivers. If you add in your tight ends and add in, your running backs, he has pass catchers in Josh Jacobs and brand new rookie running back who's a receiver as well. And that's Lynn Bowden, who we talked very high of when they drafted about how versatile he is. On top of that, Darren Waller, like you said, but then they added Jason Witten to be the number 2 tight end there and run 2 tight end sets, which just kind of makes them more of a threat. And then when you go to the receiving room, I think Tyrell Williams is a great number 2. I think he's a great number 2, and I think them drafting a receiver was very important. Hunter Renfrow is a great slot receiver. At least I know he's just like a year in, but I think he's going to develop into being one of these guys that he's just a workhorse. Them going out and drafting not only Henry Ruggs, but also going on and getting Brian Edwards, who a lot of people in the community, like fans-wise, love this guy coming out. Those two guys, I think, are going to make a really good future pairing for Derek Carr. And then you go a little deeper, and like you said, Zay Jones, Nelson Aguilar. These guys aren't top-tier wide receivers. They're not gonna, they're not gonna surprise you every week, but they are veterans that know how to play the game. And I think a change of scenery for them over the past couple of years, for Zay Jones and now for Aguilar, is a good thing. Henry Ruggs is not just going to take the top off of defenses. This guy is a complete wide receiver. He's a great route runner. He's got great hands. He's agile. People just see fast guy and then assume fast guy can't play like other receivers play,
Yeah, I think that the 40 time really throws some people off. He doesn't run like a complete route tree. He doesn't run all of the routes, but the routes that he does run, he runs them very well. He's got good hips, great hands, and he does have some breakaway strength that needed to kind of get away from arm tackles. Like we've seen that back when he was playing in Alabama as well.
And for me, overall, the glue to this whole thing is Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs, having a year under his belt in the NFL now, getting more touches, he's almost at the point where he's had as many touches as he did in college. Like, that's not true exactly what I'm saying. He only had I'm spitballing, not looking, 600 touches in college. Very few. So over 2 years in the NFL, he's going to get close to that and eclipse that. He's coming into his own, is my point. And if you have a running back that is very reliable, it makes a quarterback's job so easy. I mean, just look at last year. The Carolina Panthers won 5 games. And when the fact that he's able to have Christian McCaffrey back there, and they did so well with a dominant running back that it didn't matter if Allen or Greer was back there, that just shows me that when you have a more competent quarterback in Derek Carr, and you have a good running back, that's just going to equal success all around. Let's move into the best part of this team, though. Like I said, most important part was Josh Jacobs, but I think the best unit is this offensive line. Overall, this offensive line from left to right is stout.
Yeah, I mean they've had a decent offensive line for the last few years. Rodney Hudson is a great center. They've got Richie Incognito playing guard. He's been in the league since the dinosaurs. So they've got good players all over the offensive line. I think that really is one of their strong points on their entire team, to be honest.
I mean, last year Derek Carr was only sacked 29, which is still a little high, but that's down from 51 when they had that. It was just 2018 was a bad year for the Raiders, but still they improved off of last year. And I just think overall this offense is a really good offense that legitimately is getting slept on. But let's move into the defense.
Well, the defense, I'm really excited about the defense, to be honest. And we said it before, they were not very great last year. If I'm looking at points against, I think they were 20th in the league. Yards against, they were on the 19th. So not great, but the players they've added a lot of kind of not superstar free agents, but they had a lot of veteran depth players. We talked about Corey Littleton in our newest additions episode for the Raiders. Out there in linebacker, Nick Kwiatkowski from the Bears is a great thumper at middle linebacker. Jeff Heath, Malik Collins, a lot of solid veteran defensive players. But I think are going to come in and help out those younger players who are supposed to be stars. They drafted Damon Arnett to play quarterback.
Amick Robertson is going to be a guy that's going to develop into a really good slot cornerback, I think. Yeah,
and you also have Jonathan Abrams playing safety who was hurt last year. I mean, they have a lot of young talent on defense, and then you have the veteran players to come in and kind of be that solid depth and guidance that they need. I think this defense is going to take a huge step forward this next year.
Yeah, the biggest thing for the Raiders last year, and we kind of touched on this last episode, is that the Raiders here, they don't get turnovers. They were only 24th in sacks, which I know it's not a turnover, but I associate those together. 24th in sacks, 29th in interceptions, 26th in forced fumbles. Just overall, there's improvement to be had. And I think with these playmakers added in, these these veterans, these savvy vets, I think if their turnover rates go up just by like 3 or 4 spots, that's going to make this team more deadly. Rushing yards allowed, they were 8th last year. So they were really good on the defensive line. That front 7, front 8 did really well. It pretty much just kind of started with Maurice Hurst in the middle. And I think adding Malik Collins to that makes them a dominant 2 in the middle. And don't forget, they're deep too. They have Jonathan Hankins right behind them. So in the middle, they're legit. And then you add in the fact that they have Farrell returning and Crosby. They're 2 second-year defensive ends. And then you look at their depth, and they have like Carl Nassib, who is a good little depth piece for the Buccaneers for the past couple of years. Move to their linebackers. You've already touched on that. I think Corey Littleton is maybe the best defensive addition across the board for any AFC team. And their defensive backfield is steady. I think sometimes having like teams without like the big name playmakers can be good for teams.
They do have a lot of depth. I especially like the depth they have defensive backfield. They've got a lot of decent players. He said they don't have that big splashy name. They don't have like the Jalen Ramsey, Jamal Adams, like superstar defensive backer, really anywhere on their defense. But I think that in terms of depth, it's just a very solid team. Where I am concerned is that the cornerback position. That was something they needed to address in the draft, and they did that by drafting Damon Arnett from Ohio State. And I think it was Des Bryant. Was it Des Bryant? Who was commenting on Damon Arnett's hips in practice. He was saying he's got the smoothest hips of any cornerback he's seen. So that's good news to hear from him. But other than that, I mean, Prince Amukamara has kind of been just like an average to slightly above average cornerback throughout his career. And so, I mean, that's something that you would want to see them address throughout, like by next year, the draft or free agency. I just think they could do a little bit more by improving at that position at cornerback.
And they do have a nice little nickelback in LaMarcus Joyner as well. Now, another thing that I think is a really good addition for them is strong safety Demarius Randall. I know they added Jeff Heath, but having both those guys in there and just seeing who's going to come out with a job, I like both those additions. I think Dallas and Cleveland shouldn't have let those guys go, but what happens. The Raiders benefit from this. Let's move into predictions.
All right. Well, I want to see what you think. Do you think I'm going to go back to offense? Do you think Derek Carr goes back to the Pro Bowl? I mean, you said he's going to take a step forward. Do you think he ends up making the Pro Bowl?
I think so. I think his touchdown numbers are going to go up. His yards might stay about the same, but I think he's going to finish drives at a more consistent rate. And then I think his interception numbers will stay around the same. So, I mean, if we're looking at somebody having about 4,100 yards and then he throws about 26, 27 touchdowns with only 8 interceptions, to me, that's a Pro Bowl style quarterback. Obviously, there's a lot of options in the AFC for quarterbacks, but I think he has a legit chance to stake his claim, especially with the cast he has.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I think the stage is set for him to really break out and go back to the Pro Bowl. He hasn't been there in a few years. What about defense? Where do you see them ranking on defense next year in terms of overall defense, points allowed, yards allowed?
I think they're going to slowly creep towards everything that they do being rated in the top 20, which isn't, I know a lot of these people probably like, whenever you look at like NFL.com or ESPN, they're like, whenever they make a prediction, they're just like, yeah, these guys were 30th last year and now they're going to be number 2. Like, that's too bold. Teams don't jump that high. I mean, if they take their average passing yards allowed per game from 25 to 20, that's a huge success. I think overall this defense is going to move into top 20, almost mid-tier, which could be close to 16. So anywhere in that 16 to 20 range. And I think that's a huge success for this team. It really just starts with getting the turnovers, because when you get the turnovers, obviously, John Madden and me, the other team can't get more yards.
I'm going to do exactly what you hate, and I'm going to be bold here. I think their defense is going to be top 10 next year, both in points and yards allowed. I know you hate me right now. I can see your eyes rolled back into they rolled all the way back into the forward again. But yeah, I think Raiders defense top 10 next year. You can write it down.
Did a barrel roll with my eyes.
Do a barrel roll.
And for record, for predictions for me is I think honestly 8-8 is a comfortable spot. I think at worst this team, if all fails, like literally if stuff just the chemistry doesn't mesh, Derek Carr doesn't improve in his third year with Gruden, and the receivers don't gel, I could see this team falling to like 6-10. I really could. That's my floor. But 8-8 is my safe spot. I really think they could push to be anywhere up to 10-6. They got a difficult schedule, and that's really the factor there is can they beat some of these NFC South teams? Can they beat these AFC East teams? If they can win those games, they should be all right. I mean, we talked about how the Broncos in their division have a little tougher matchup by playing, they play with the Titans and Steelers, and these Raiders here, they get the Colts and the Browns, so it's not, in my eyes, it's not easier, but it's not harder. It just depends on if they can get those games. And I don't necessarily think that the Raiders have to steal a game from the Chiefs. I think that they could go 4-2 in their division and be just fine.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think they do have potential to be a surprise dumpster fire as well. As long as we're talking about how we think they're going to be surprisingly good, they could be surprisingly bad. Like maybe Gruden loses a locker room. Derek Carr doesn't put it together. Injuries, defense doesn't play up the potential. I could see them going like 3-13, 4-12. But if I'm being more realistic, I think they'll go similar to last year, between 7-9 and 9-7, with 10-6 being like their absolute ceiling.
Now let's talk about the positive here, real quick, Raiders fans, before we get out. If they do well, playoffs, right? Simple. Okay, that means everybody performed. If they do bad, you're in the running for Trevor Lawrence. So this is the year you don't want to be mediocre. You either want to go for it and win, or if you're bad, be bad. But I think that's what's going to happen here. Either Derek Carr is going to get an extension onto his contract at the end of the year, potentially, or a little down the line if he can, and he's going to remain the Raiders quarterback for a long time because of his play, or it's time for something new.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, there's always the huge quarterback prospect from college. Everyone's like, oh, we got to tank for him. If we're going to tank for Jameis Winston or for Andrew Luck, or even this year it was a tank for Tua until it was tank for Joe Burrow. But so, I mean, you're always going to have that quarterback that you can draft. I mean, Trevor Lawrence supposedly is going to be a generational talent. So if they do end up being really terrible, draft Trevor Lawrence, I guess.
And that is going to do it for us here on Second and Short in this Sleepers and Contenders of 2020 episode. I thank you guys for listening to us here and sticking along. Raiders fans, we want to thank you guys especially because right now you guys are our biggest fan base. Most liked videos, most viewed video. Let's see if this one can top that. If you guys want to check us out even more, hit that subscribe button. Look down in our little bio right there. You can see all of our links to whatever you need for our podcast. We are on Anchor. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. We're everywhere.
We really are everywhere.
Yeah, and if they want to see us more than just our audio or our video, what else can they check us out at?
Check us out and check out our YouTube channel. We're always putting all of our episodes up there. We're also on social media on Facebook, Twitter. We got polls going on every week. Instagram, we got news updates, discussion points, general just football stuff going on Instagram as well. And feel free to send us a direct message wherever you want, whichever platform, whatever time of day, whenever you're feeling lonely.
All right, thanks for listening, guys. Y'all have a good night.